you have to say that this is one of the biggest wins that you've seen any program make in our lifetimes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Right.
When you think about the direction that Michigan's program could have been headed with a loss, like the 40 yards that separated the thin line between winning and losing, and what that would have meant for the program, what it would have meant for Jim Harbaugh, what it would have meant for the Spygate narrative, I think that you can make the case that this was the biggest regular season win of the last decade. I felt like I was watching five storylines all unfolding in front of our eyes all at once. Now, I am very interested to see how Michigan's scandal is going to be viewed by the general public now that they won a game after this all came out without it against a pretty good Ohio State team. And that is going to be an interesting thing to see unfold. But I certainly think a program win that probably takes the cake for me. I don't know if I'm forgetting one.
I was thinking about this. The Blue Bloods, their legacy and their perception is so cemented that it's hard to have one game really affect that. But Michigan, because of this sort of unprecedented sign stealing advantage, was in that weird spot where they were. The whole Harbaugh era, the rise post 2020 season was under question. And so I agree with you. I think regular season, you're right. In terms of biggest wins, like that shaped more than just that team or that
shaped
season.
Program, shaped conferences, shaped other.
I think for me, the two that came to mind were Boise over Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, and TCU over Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl. I think those are the two that jumped out to me. TCU probably doesn't get in the Big 12 without that win. That changed how people viewed them. And Boise, even now, they haven't really been what they were under Chris Peterson, and certainly in other times as well. But their brand still resonates, and it all started with that Fiesta Bowl win over Adrian Peterson.
Antonio, does any USC have any big wins in the last 10 years that I can remember?
I think Oregon.
What about else? What about other teams?
Oregon, I think, though they won the Fiesta Bowl like in 2001, like they kicked the crap out of like Pete Carroll's USC team, his last one in 2009. That was Chip Kelly's first year as a head coach, and I think that kind of showed everybody kind of what was coming, where the power was going to transition from USC to Oregon, and they went to the Rose Bowl. They won the conference that year, and I think they won the conference like 3 straight years and played the national title game the next year. So that's one on the West Coast that stands out a bit.
Yeah, the 3 wins in a row in the rivalry. Undefeated, number 1 versus number 2, Ohio State. Jim Harbaugh's not on the sideline. The Spygate scandal, a berth in the Big Ten championship game, college football playoff berth alive, making the college football playoff during a time in which it's probably the fastest and maybe less. I mean, Georgia still exists, but if they're going to win a national championship, this is a year you do it. When you add up all of that, not to mention that it delegitimizes certain aspects of the Spygate scandal in terms of whether or not you look your nose down at what they built there as just a result of cheating alone.
Absolutely.
I think that all these things added up in the accumulation of all those talking points, I think undeniably makes this the biggest regular season win I can remember in my adulthood. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything, but
no, I think the only one in recent history that jumped out to me was Cincinnati over Notre Dame, because we haven't had a program that won as many games as Michigan had that had to answer for its perception. That's not a thing that has to happen. When you have a Power 5 team that wins, 30 games is whatever they have in the last 3 years, people just sort of accept it as like, oh, they're on a really nice run. Nobody is like, oh, but like it's fraudulent for whatever. 3 years is a long time to be playing winning football. But because of all that stuff, I think that they're in such a weird spot that like that's why pretty much only the smaller teams jumped out to me, because a lot of people do question how good those teams really are. And the big schools don't really ever have to have that. But when you have this cheating scandal that colors a full 2.5 seasons, you have to sort of You know, I
Well, let
still
me-
like my comparison.
you
about
phrase
the,
it
Mike
this way?
Sneakers. Mm-hmm.
Phrase it this way. Ohio State beats Michigan on Saturday in the Big House 33 to 17 or 33 to 10. And it's one of those games where Ohio State controlled the game from start to finish. Could you imagine what we'd be talking about right now? I mean, think about it from the reverse. Like, could you imagine that? Now, the thing that I'm most interested in is, and we're going to get to an Ohio State question, I think, later on in the show, but Ohio State is kind of in a position right now where it has some soul searching to do again, right? I have a column running on The Athletic on Monday about Ryan Day, the way he called the game and why he could have a Michigan problem or does have a Michigan problem. But by and large, you can expect that Ohio State's probably going to win 10 or 11 games again next year, right? Like with the team that they have and how they recruit and who they're playing. You know, I know that the new Pac-12 teams are going to be in there next year, so maybe it's going to be harder to get to 11. But there are a lot of question marks for Michigan moving forward. Like, is Harbaugh going to be your coach next year? Is the NCAA going to get involved and do anything? Like, all that stuff still exists. And we didn't talk about it this weekend because it didn't matter at the time. But, like, you better savor it now, too, because you don't know what's coming down the pike. You know, and maybe Sherrone Moore will just get hired. And what do you mean? Well, I'm saying, like,
going to take a step back.
If Michigan is Michigan going to take another 7 to 10 year step back because they lose their
7 to 10 years, but at least a year or two.
Yeah, I mean,
Ohio State,
they're losing a very large crux of their team this year. We don't know who their coach is going to be next year. They haven't recruited in a way that makes it feel like they are untouchable. And the thing that they've done really well is a transfer portal. Who's going to want to transfer into a place that's in trouble? Like, that is like, go get it this year because it might be a tough few years coming down the pike. But in terms of what it means for this 3-year sliver, I think I was listening to a podcast and they said that there was only 3 or 4 instances of Ohio State losing 3 in a row in the entire history of the rivalry. Like, this is going to be a golden era of Michigan football, and it's going to be something that people talk about when they're 30 or 40 years down the road when they're talking about their earlier memories of this. I just don't know what happens in terms of sustainability. I didn't know the sustainability of the program before all this happened. And now with all this happening, like, I don't think that Harbaugh is going to be the coach next year. So we'll see how it goes. But certainly in terms of big regular season wins, I can't even come close to catching up to one that amounts to this.
Yeah.